Hi, I'm Nicholas at Erthenvar. Today we're going to assemble one of our Boogie board DIY Euro rack and tile kits. Now, the only tools you need for this are a 3/32 Allen wrench and a small number 1 Phillips screwdriver. You don't need any drill bits, you don't need a solder, no sawing, no gluing. You might want to finish your case in paint, or this is actually a clear matte enamel that I'm going to do because I want to preserve the natural look of the wood, but I want to preserve it from smudging or any other blemishes. So I'm going to do that after I assemble the kit, but I'll report back on that later. Anyhow, the Boogie board is a flat pack Euro rack. It comes in a medium flat rate priority mail box, so it's really easy and cheap to ship. It comes with everything you need, including power, so case, screws, rail nuts, power supply, everything. So you can do roll call for all the items once you get it and unpack it. Everything that you should have is in the user guide, so you can read up on all items that should be included. We've got vector rails, brackets, a line lump power supply. We have 4 bags of hardware. There's one with some rubber feet, one with miscellaneous hardware, one with 6mm stainless steel screws that you'll be using for your modules, and 1 bag of M2.5 square rail nuts. We also have a powered bus board, our new Magic Bus. It has both Euro rack connectors and tile connectors. There are 10 Euro rack connectors and 16 tile power connectors. There's a DC barrel jack here that goes right through the case. So like I said, you don't even need to drill to accomplish this project. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to set the bus board aside for now. We don't need that until later. Set the wood aside for later, and I'm going to follow along in the user guide. So if you've got that open while you do your assembly, that's probably a good idea. All right, we found our clean work surface. We're going to lay the 4 rails horizontally, kind of in the shape that we're going to do the case. So we've got one on top. The channels need to face each other. So here we've got the channel facing me. The next one, the channels are going to face upward, so that forms the 3U section. And you just need to roughly set it up for now. It doesn't have to be precise dimensions or anything. So now I've got the channel facing me again, and the channel facing up. So you can kind of see now we've got your 3U section and we've got your 1U section. Okay, next we're going to add the Allen keys into the rails. This is kind of unique to our brackets. It helps square everything up and makes assembly a little bit easier. So I'm going to just dump all the hardware here. They're these little black set screws. You can see they have an Allen key in them, and they go in the bottom hole of each one of these rails that's here. So you can gently thread it by hand, and then you'll take your 3/32 Allen key. You want it to go in relatively straight, well actually perfectly straight. It's fairly easy. I don't think you'll have any problem with angle or anything. And you want to put it in until you've got just under an 1/8 inch sticking out. You can correct this later, but if you wanted to right now, you can take the bracket, which is 1/8 inch thick, and see how you're doing. So I went in a little too far. It's nice if it's flush with the bracket. So I'll do this on both sides. Again, the bottom channel, the one that's closest to the table. All right, so we've added the 8 set screws. Next, we're going to take the bracket and start assembling from one side. So the brackets have countersink screws on both sides. The direction will be, let's see, so the set screw holes face down, and then the top and bottom center holes should be countersunk on the outside, so we can tell this is the right bracket. So I'm going to gently set each of those black set screws into the bottom holes, and as you can see, it's really easy. It all just kind of lines up. Next, we want to take the 1024 machine screws and put them into each of the center holes that are countersunk with that cone-shaped hole. That's going to hold the bracket onto the rails. So this is going to be a Phillips screwdriver. So again, you're going to be tapping these rails as you do it. These have been tapped before, so it's a little easy for the video. But you want to go perpendicular and keep it nice and straight, go slow. It's not super critical, but you want it to be straight. So these are M2.5 square rail nuts. These are what we sell for DIY cases. 18 in the Euro rack section, each rail, and 20 in the 1U section. So you just take the nut, lay it flat, as you'd imagine the screw would go in, and just set it into the rail. All right, we have all the nuts loaded into our rails. We're going to install the second bracket. So the 1U section goes towards you and the alignment holes go towards the table. So fit each of the set screws through those bottom holes, and then take our 1024 Phillips screws. It's probably easiest if you do the two outside screws first to hold everything together. All right, we have a nice 3U 1U frame. Let's set it aside and do the wooden case. So you receive a piece of scrap wood in case you want to try some paint on it before you actually paint your boogie board. We'll set this aside. We're not going to do any painting today. All right, there's a total of 5 pieces. There's the front, which has the Erthenvar logo on it. There's the back, which has the hole for the DC power supply, the 2 sides, and the base. So let's orient the base so that the bus holes are towards the left. That's going to set up so that we can put the DC barrel jack at the back on the same side. I recommend putting together the wood perpendicular. So take each piece and insert it directly how it's going to be in the final case design. Don't hinge it up, it'll wear the joint a little bit and maybe make the wood look a little grungy. So we've got 2 pieces together. The order doesn't really matter, it'll fit together the same. You might have to do a little wiggling anyway. So it's pretty close to press fit. As you can see, there's nothing holding it together besides the wood. But we still add some hardware so that it doesn't fall apart. The final piece. So that fit together pretty nicely. So let's do the hardware that lives in each of the corners now. You're going to need a 12mm Phillips screw, which is a pretty long guy, long and narrow screw, and a square rail nut. So there's a total of 12 of these, so you can prepare them all at once. What I like to do is take the square rail nut and thread it just a little bit onto the 12mm screw, so you get a little assembly like this, and we'll insert these into the case in just a second. So I'm going to prepare all 12 of these joint screws. All right, so I have 12 of these little screw and nut assemblies. So what we're going to do is take each one of these nut and screw assemblies and install them into the holes on each of the corners. So you can set the square rail nut into the cross of the T, and the screw should come out the perpendicular side, and you can tighten it with a Phillips screwdriver. It doesn't have to be too tight, just tight enough that it's going to hold the wood together. And you can also try and straighten the nut so it looks nice to you by pushing it back or forth within the hole. Okay, so we have our fully assembled wooden box. It has all of the hardware in the corners. We've got a logo up front. We've got the DC barrel jack. Now if the logo is facing me and it's on the left side, the DC barrel jack should be on the left side in the back. Next we're going to add the screws for the Magic Bus. It's easiest if you put the case up on its side for this step. Take a long 12mm screw and stick it through each one of the 6 holes in the bottom. On the inside, you take the remaining square rail nuts and you thread it onto the screw, so we've got a little standoff inside of the case. So repeat that for all 6. Okay, now we have the standoffs installed, so we can add our bus board into the case. Gonna have it facing me again. Set it aside just for a second. So this is the Magic Bus. The barrel jack should be to the left side and the Eurorack connectors to the right. And this will just sit right on top of the standoffs we created in the case. So we can take 6 more square rail nuts and thread them onto the 6 standoffs. You can tighten them with this custom-made wrench, which just happens to fit the square rail nut. So since you can't get a big tool in there, you can use this to just tighten it down a little bit more than you can do with your fingers. Okay, so we've secured the bus board at the bottom of our case. Now we're going to take the DC barrel jack and push it through the hole. You're going to first need to take this hex nut off. Don't lose it. And the DC barrel jack only goes through one way. You want to keep the biggest flat surface at the top facing you. Stick it through the wood, and then you can just use your fingers to hand tighten the hex nut on the outside, and that will hold the DC barrel jack. It looks really neat, and it is a center positive plug, which is indicated on the case. It takes 9 to 18 volts DC, which is also indicated. So this is probably a good time to take the rubber bands off of the tile power connectors. All right, now we're going to take the frame and install it into our wooden box, creating a case. That's pretty cool. So you should have 4 sets of number 6 screws and number 6 cap nuts. They go through each of the 4 corners. So we're going to take the bracket assembly. So my Erthenvar logo is facing me, the 1U section is facing me, and the nuts are facing up because we need to mount our modules somewhere. So you can slide it into the case. It shouldn't be too tight. It should have just enough room. Be careful not to scrape anything up as you push it down. And if you can get it to stay, you should probably go grab a screw and a nut and get it through one of the holes so you've got one pivot point. When you put the nut on, don't smudge against the case too much or you're also going to get a nice ring around the nut. Like I said, I'm going to spray this with some matte clear spray so that it won't smudge. So I've got two. I'm not tightening them all the way, just so I've got a little wiggle room still. So the screw goes from the inside into the countersunk hole. Screw comes out and the cap nut just threads on. All right, since we haven't tightened them up yet, we still have a little wiggle room. So you can move the gap and kind of distribute it between the top and the bottom of the case. Make it look good to your eyes. Straighten everything out, and once we're good, just take a Phillips screwdriver, hold the nut with your fingers, and again, just hand tight is good enough. You don't need a wrench or anything. Okay, our case is complete. It's got some nice cap nuts on the side. Also included are 2 sets of rubber feet. They're different heights, so if you've got any rocking issues, this one feels pretty flat. Don't forget to paint your case, have fun with it. Maybe use some Sharpie or even ballpoint pen. Like I said, I'm gonna keep the natural look, so I'm gonna do the matte spray over it. I would probably choose to paint before I install all the corner hardware, definitely the case hardware. Okay, to power the case up, we take our line lump, connect the barrel there, take the IEC cord into the line lump. There are 3 LEDs inside of the Boogie board. D1 indicates that you've got voltage on the input. D2 indicates that plus 12 volts is working, and D3 indicates that minus 12 volts is working. Now, install your modules, plug them in, have fun, double check the power polarity, use these nice stainless steel screws on all of your modules, and have fun.